YouTube, what is happening today, guys? This is kind of a different video. I haven't really done anything like this before, but I thought it was a cool idea to do, and I really appreciate the guy that we're going to be watching here in a second. I watch a lot of his videos. I enjoy his content. So what we have is a video from RageGamingVideos. It is his Necromancer is not what I expected after 200 hours video, and since you all know that I main a Necromancer, that I was thinking that maybe I would watch it, record my reaction to it, and see if I kind of disagree or agree with it. So, we're going to get into this video, watch it, and I will have the link to the video in the description below. And as always, peace.
Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming. My name is Olo and I main Necromancer in Diablo 4. There's some interesting details about Necromancer that I want to share with you. In the race to World First 100, they were the least represented class of the 5.
I don't doubt that one bit, actually. I don't.
Not even in the top 10. Of the top players, as found by the stats of D4 Armory, Necromancers make up the smallest percent. There's just 382 of them compared to the nearly double, just shy 600 Barbarians and 600 Sorcerers. Knowing this and my personal experience in the game, I was coming to the conclusion that Necromancer is the least played class in the game. That was until Blizzard themselves revealed these really interesting statistics and what the most popular class of the entire player base actually is. And as it turns out, it's not Necromancer, it's Sorcerer.
Yeah, I see the least amount of Necros out in the open world. That's for sure.
Of course it's Sorcerer. Necromancer is clearly the least played class. Then there's this general sentiment that Necromancers are meant to be, well, Necromancers. You know, the guys who raised the dead to use them for their purposes? How many of those top-end Necromancers are using minion builds? 20%. Honestly, that number is higher than I expected, which is pretty dire. Despite the fact that the minion build is clearly weaker than their best options, it's actually still a very popular concept across the player base as a whole. People want to make it work, because that's kind of the entire draw of a Necromancer, to be a Necromancer. I've been doing my own testing, and have been trying to make it work myself.
It's not just, you know, it's the fantasy of the Necromancer that really plays into effect there, but it's the fact that you can go through a dungeon, hit a corner around a room that you can't see, and not get face rolled by 5 elites that you didn't even know were there. They provide a buffer between you and the enemy, allowing you to breathe. At least that's how I feel about it.
Well, in the first balancing patch we experienced, Necromancers were buffed in some major ways. The minion build was improved directly. Your warriors and golems deal more damage. Specific types of minions were buffed, like blood and iron golems, and the Army of the Dead ultimate was majorly buffed in both damage and cooldown. Even Paragon board buffs happen for minion builds related options. Meanwhile, the even less used Blood Necromancer, it had big damage buffs for its core abilities and its ultimate. And there were also, nerfs to Necromancer. Corpse Explosion providing less essence, the bone related passive Serration, that was nerfed slightly. Despite these changes, the bone builds are the most played and most powerful builds of the Necromancer, while the minion and blood options, they remain underplayed even after those buffs. What do I think about Necromancer after reaching level 80? I think they're awesome. I think they're really powerful. They have the ability to draw some of the highest numbers, some of the most consistent DPS, and with Bone Spirit specifically, some of the highest burst. Are they the strongest of either of those things? Well, no, Barbarian exists, and those guys laugh at us 5 to 7 million hits while landing 10 to 15 million themselves. But still, compared to all of the classes, we are hitting really hard. Necromancer can function solo, and are a great thing to have in a party. However, their survivability and their defenses and complete lack of them, that's another story. In my perspective, the true issue with Necromancer right now, when compared to other classes, is how single-minded and lacking they are in variety. The meta play is to use one of the bone builds and sacrifice your minions. The off-meta play that's popular is to play minions anyway, because you want to feel like
Minion Shadow. Minion Shadow was really good. I hate going with the meta. I think that metas are bad in video games. I think that metas are bad in general. I think that you should be able to choose any one of the different variety of options or mix and match, blood, like how he has blood, shadow, and bone, but you should be able to make a build with any of those combinations and have it synergize really well. Having played all the classes in the beta and then really maining a necro, that really isn't the case. if you use blood hemorrhage, you're picking up blood orbs. Blood orbs, unless you have the gear for it, do shit other than unless you have, blood surge. So it's like you can't really use that to prospect and add on to your bone build. It's more of like a utility to generate survivability.
Like a necromancer. In all situations, you're going to be the slowest class. You've got next to no mitigation. That's a dangerous thing in high nightmare dungeon tiers, or a hardcore account in general. So is it fair to say that necromancer needs more attention, despite the fact that I think it is one of the strongest if you're playing a bone build? While the other builds, the non-meta builds, certainly need love, I think it goes beyond that as an issue for the necromancer class. Why is it so poorly represented both in the race to world first and the top players as a whole, especially when we look at the hardcore category? My fear right now when it comes to necromancer is based on how they've been balancing the game so far with hotfixes. They've been crushing XP and good loot caves with sort of an iron fist. They've even straight removed certain aspects from the game. Anything that suddenly changes what you were doing and forces you to adapt or change your build is unfortunate in general, but in Diablo 4, changing your build is extremely time consuming, extremely expensive on multiple resources, and it might not even be possible if you weren't already hoarding backup gear, which you have.
As somebody that recently just did the Shadow minion build to the Bone Spear jump, I have all 4 of my stash tabs. If you guys have watched me before, you guys have seen it on the stream. I have all 4 of my stash tabs filled with mostly all Sacred Legendary. And there was a lot of good powerful gear. I switched over to Bone build. I had all the aspects I want except one. That was the Bone Storm duration on consuming 8 corpses one. But I still did not have enough gear to stack the amount of critical chance needed for good bone builds. So you have to have almost 100% critical chance. And if you don't, it's trash.
Next to no room for in that tiny stash. So yeah, with that in mind, my fear with Necromancer is that they're gonna ruin the class. I know that's a vitriol statement, but let me explain. I think you're kidding yourself if you think Necromancers are weak. Because of the bone builds,
not weak.
Their output and burst is some of the highest in the game. It's obviously entirely connected to
their burst is ridiculously strong. Their sustained damage, on the other hand, I think is weaker compared to the other classes. 16, almost about to be 69, and that's where I stand. And I thought that I would be a very good apt to either agree or disagree with this, only because he's played for 200. I think I'm at about 150 so far on the Necro, and I see the funny thing is that I agree with everything with what they are saying, and I love my Necro, but it does have some flaws.
And crit strike builds. Bone Spear and Bone Spirit are interlinked because they both want crit, they both consume tons of resources, they're quite similar in the way that you build them. So based on the way Diablo devs have been balancing their game so far, they've basically just been slamming strong things and not improving the things that aren't strong enough. Let me give you an example. They want us to engage with Nightmare Dungeons and push higher tiers, clearly. But instead, a lot of us are running XP farms and loot caves instead because it's a lot more efficient. Instead of nerfing that and then increasing the value of Nightmare Dungeons so they're worth, more XP and the loot's better, especially maybe the higher tiers you're at, maybe the better loot and the better XP by comparison.
Yeah,
well, that's just not happened. They've just been nerfing. What if they do that to Necromancers? What if they take the awesome, kind of crazy bone crit builds and nerf those? What would we be left with at that point? Well, all of our builds would be weak. And at that point, it wouldn't really be up for debate. Necromancers would be the weakest class. As it stands, we have no mitigation. You can get some via your Paragon, like any class, and you can get some from your equipment aspects, like any class. But take Sorcerer. They have multiple defensive abilities, and most run a lot of them or all of them. Barbs have their shouts, rogues have their insane mobility, and straight damage mitigation with, say, Dark Shroud. Druids are just a meggy tanky bear when they're in that build. They're like the tankiest of all. What we have is the Force 1 button of Blood Mist, which completely stops damage. The ultimate mitigation. Only it stops us from being able to attack and last a very short time, and even mega slows you more active. I'm not saying that having an iframe ability is bad. It's obviously amazing in those tight situations, but it's a lot more consistent and reliable to have damage. If I mitigate the incoming damage, I can survive the attack while fighting back, therefore killing the enemies and stopping the threat. If I iframe the attack with Blood Mist, what happens when I come out? Well, the enemies are still alive, and here comes the pain. I mean, I use that to go through packs, set up fights, let my cooldowns reset while being in iframes. It is a very useful thing, but how about the option of a blood shield or something like that? That'd be awesome. We can fortify, and that's a major way we get survivability, but that's talking about multiple glyphs, multiple aspects, a major commitment, because we literally just don't have like a shield shield ability. The other part that sucks about the class is the total lack of mobility. The druids and their werewolf just fly around. The rogues, they're the same. They teleport and
Even, see, I disagree with that. And the only reason is probably because my boots have +4 fade charges. So I always feel like I'm able to move around very quick, charge really fast. But that is 100% gear dependent. And then you are reducing the other bonus. I forget what it is. +20% potion increase or something like that. That's actually really good, especially when you're going through high tier nightmares.
dash and zoom. Sorcerers have the greatest mobility in teleport. It even lets them jump over terrain in the open world, which is so cool. Barbarians have rallying cry that not only increases their movement speed, but gives them a massive burst of resource generation. And that's stacked into one ability because that's fun and useful. It's good design. By comparison, the Necromancer has the amazing ability to walk everywhere and has the short dash dodge cooldown, just like everyone else. So while the other four have mobility, we don't. Why not do what they did with Barbarians and stack up a nice movement speed effect on a relevant ability? You could say pop a corpse and get stacking movement speed the more you pop, or the priest that buffs your minions, maybe that also buffs you to boost your movement speed. Maybe Blood Mist has a passive like that shout the Barbarians have that also increases movement, maybe like when you're near enemies or near corpses or something like that. There's totally ways to do it, and I think there's ways to do it without going too far. But I also completely understand that the class, especially with bone builds specifically, is really powerful in terms of damage. Imagine if we got all this movement improvement and survivability as well. That could make us the undisputable strongest class in the game by a lot, and I can see how they don't want that. So balancing is difficult and a complicated thing, and I acknowledge that. At the end of the day, I play this class for a reason. I think it's fun. I just want to see the glaring issues improved. I just understand that it's hard to do. They've already given us one good balance patch, improving the off-meta builds in important ways. I just don't think it was enough for those builds or the class as a whole. We could see either mitigation or mobility or some of both. I'd love to see that, but I know it might be too much at the same time. As I make this video to express my thoughts on Necromancer, there is this feeling that a patch is just imminent, that one is coming and it might address the balance issues of all classes. It may even be out now while I release this video, so I'll be interested to see how accurate or inaccurate I was with whatever changes they might have made. And you know, it's not just Necromancer. Other classes have awesome concepts and builds that are completely underused.
Absolutely. I think that every class, maybe not the Druid, only because I really didn't put as much time into the Druid as I put in all the other classes, but I felt like you had to go Werebear or Bear Druid. Like a Storm Druid just wouldn't be able to handle the higher roll tiers. I could be wrong, and plus I only played the Druid in the beta. That's going to be my next character that I'm going to play after the Necro. But yeah, Barbarian, Sorceress, Rogue especially, you could go with any one of their builds and be very viable. I noticed that I was capping myself on damage at the end of the World Tier 3 push going into World Tier 4, and that there was no progression from there. It was like, this is what it was going to be, and I would just, increasingly make those. I felt like there was no sense, and then I was tied to like 5 or 6 aspects that were all about my minions, which really sucked because that took away all my defensibility. So Necro really needs to buff the other class or the other builds, or redesign some of the class passives that allow us to mitigate more damage.
To weak power levels. Both Sorcerer and Barbarian exclusively use the same 3 or 4 abilities, with variation in just 1 or 2 depending on the build, which kinda sucks. Variety is really fun, and there's so much potential in Diablo 4 for that in strong endgame builds. But right now, there's little to no variety, and it's hard to engage with that anyway, because it costs me 600k to respec my talents, it costs me loads more gold to pull back my Paragon points, and it's slow as hell, 1 point at a time. Then you got the gear, there's just no stash space to work and keep things organized. So I'm really wondering if maybe in Season 1 we'll see like a loadout system, or at least something where they walk back how brutal build swapping really is. But yeah, that's the end of my Necromancer-based talk. I would like us to have survivability in the form of either mitigation or mobility, or both. I would like to see off-meta builds like the Minion Necromancer being a lot stronger. To be honest, Minion Necromancer should have been one of the stronger builds and should have always been one of the strongest options for a Necromancer. But Blood really needs help too. I appreciate again that balancing is hard and going too far is easy. I am enjoying the class in its current state, and that's fine with me, but it does need more love. Finally, please give us better ability to swap builds. But yeah, what do you guys think? How are you finding Necromancer? How would you address a lack of mobility and mitigation? How would you buff, say, the minion build? For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
So I actually agree. I agree with everything he pretty much said. Spot on with the Necromancer. I think that our survivability is absolute dog water. I think that our mobility is worse than our survivability. And that our damage is cornered to one build that is fun. I do enjoy the bone build. It's really fun to get a lot of bone spears bouncing off the walls. It makes you feel like you have 100% thorns all the time, or artillery all the time. And it's fun, and I do enjoy it. But I do think that, especially blood, the blood build, it's so close to being almost a perfect build in my eyes, because the amount of fortify, barrier, and the amount of overpower damage that you can do on the lower tiers was phenomenal. You could run through and blood surge and everything just pops around you. Then you add on a corpse explosion. It was fun. It wasn't just viable, but it was fun. And I think that's a very important aspect of the class. And even though I love my Necromancers, I'm not a minion fan. I don't buy into the minion fantasy. I like to more think Power of the Undead, Shadow. That's why I went Shadow build. And that really did a lot of fun. But yeah, I think this was a great video. I think that Blizzard does have a lot of room for improvement, and I think that they will be doing so soon. And by the way, I'll make sure to post this link to this video down below. Make sure you go over there, like and subscribe to him too. He has good stuff. And as always, until next time, guys, peace.